Guys, I'm just delighted to welcome to the podcast Peter Schweizer, my friend, investigator extraordinaire, president of the Government Accountability Institute, and author of this remarkable bestseller, Red-Handed: How American Elites Get Rich, Helping China Win. Peter, thanks for joining me. There's just so much in this book. It's so thoroughly researched. I want people to get the book, read the chapter and verse for themselves. But let's just touch on some of the high points, starting with the big man, Joe Biden. How has Joe Biden and the Biden family enriched themselves at the hands of the Chinese?
Well, Hunter Biden did a series of business deals in China. I first reported on that back in 2018. But we have new information. We have the Hunter Biden laptop. We have an email collection from one of his business partners. And what we've done, Dinesh, is try to figure out exactly how much money did they get and who made those deals happen. Or as our kids would say, who made it rain for the Bidens in China. And what we found is that the deals that we know of, they received some $31 million in these deals. And these deals were arranged by Chinese businessmen. And every single one of them has links to the highest levels of Chinese intelligence. So what was initially a story about corruption, self-dealing, and cronyism is, in my mind, a story now of intelligence, possibly of espionage. And we need to entertain the idea and investigate the fact that the Biden family may actually be compromised by Chinese intelligence.
One thing I found striking is that we know, and I think you talked in one of my movies about Rosemont Seneca as being one of the pass-through companies that was set up by Hunter Biden along with a business partner named Archer. But here in the book, you divulged that it isn't one company. Rather, there's a kind of a myriad, a network of companies. And I wonder if the motive of doing it this way is to camouflage the degree of involvement between the Bidens and China.
I think absolutely that's part of the motivation. I mean, there are dozens of LLCs, limited liability companies that Hunter Biden set up. Some of them are simply pass-throughs. Some of them serve very specific purposes. But yes, it's kind of this plate of spaghetti of entangled LLCs that work together. And I think obscuring the trail is part of it. It's also clear that Hunter Biden was trying to obscure the trail in other ways. One of the things I point out is that once he started securing these deals in China, that, as I said, are linked to Chinese intelligence in some way, you have Hunter Biden make a very bizarre request. He goes to the U.S. Secret Service, and they've confirmed this, and says, I don't want protection when I travel overseas, including to China. This is remarkable because anybody who does business in China knows that you can be vulnerable to compromise, to all kinds of intelligence operations, and that would include the vice president as well. So yes, there's a lot of efforts here to conceal who he was doing the deals with and how that money was channeled back to the family.
Also, Peter, once you trace the money flowing into the Biden family, you make it really clear that this isn't just for funding Hunter Biden's drug habit, or it isn't money just for Hunter Biden to pocket for himself. There's a very interesting way in which it flows back to other members of the Biden family, including the man sitting in the Oval Office. Describe how that happens.
Yeah, it's interesting. Joe Biden says, I've never taken a dime of foreign money. Well, that's because it's in effect laundered through Hunter, because what we found out is that Hunter Biden was subsidizing his father's lifestyle. He was paying some of his monthly bills, but he was also paying for other expenses like renovations on his home in Delaware, while Joe Biden was vice president of the United States. So Hunter Biden, in a sense, is kind of the entity that serves as the pass-through between these Chinese companies or businessmen and Joe Biden himself. To be clear, this is not legal. You're not allowed to do this as a politician, to have your lifestyle subsidized by a family member. And it also raises troubling questions about the issue of compromise, because I'm sure that Beijing has some awareness of where this money's going. And I think that Joe Biden had to have an inkling that this money was coming from Hunter's overseas deals.
I mean, one thing, Peter, is that you could have written a whole book just on the Bidens, but you expand the circumference of this inquiry. You talk about members of Congress. I want to focus briefly on two, Nancy Pelosi and Dianne Feinstein. I mentioned Dianne Feinstein because she's not only an influential senator, but she's been in there for a long time, and so has cultivated, as you demonstrate, long-term dealings with the Chinese. Talk about how the Pelosi and Feinstein families have struck it rich, in part through the Chinese.
Well, Dianne Feinstein, as you point out, it's unfolded over the course of decades. And what's important to point out is that Dianne Feinstein was the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, one of only a handful of people that get access to the top intelligence in the country. And during her tenure in that position, her husband was securing hundreds of millions of dollars of deals in China. Deals with Chinese state-owned companies. A lot of them were regarded as groundbreaking because her husband, Richard Blum, was the first one to get those kinds of deals in China, which speaks to the fact that these were special deals. But to show how this penetration worked in sort of a bizarre way, while she is chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, her husband, Richard Blum, is a large shareholder in a Chinese computer company called Legend, which sells computers to the United States military. You got to wonder how that happens. But the U.S. Marine Corps discovers that these laptop computers have bugs in them, and they're sending all the information back to China. That's part of the record in several court cases. So the bottom line is the chairwoman of the Senate Intelligence Committee's husband is partners with a company that is trying to bug the laptops of the United States Marine Corps at the same time. You can't make it up. When you look at Nancy Pelosi, she used to be very critical of Beijing in the 1990s. That changed when her husband and her son started securing deals overseas in mainland China. And it's reached the point now where she says, yes, China does commit a genocide against the Uyghurs. And yes, it has a horrible human rights record, but that doesn't matter because there are more important issues to address, which China is very happy with that. It's important to keep in mind their approach on these matters is they don't expect robotic response from American politicians. Their strategy, loosely translated, is they want big help with a little bad mouth. So if you talk about the Uyghurs, if you talk about human rights, they don't really care. As long as you help them with the really big and important stuff, they are very happy with what American politicians are doing for them.
Let's take a pause, Peter. When we come back, I want to delve into this some more by talking about some private sector actors, people like Jack Dorsey at Twitter, people like Joe Tsai, LeBron James. We'll be right back.